Hello, this is Amber Willenberg from the U of L Libraries, and in this video, we're going to talk about using library databases and broader search engines like Google to find sources for your literary analysis and research paper. The literary analysis assignment requires you to utilize secondary sources from library databases, and the research paper requires you to conduct research in both library databases and internet search engines like Google. We'll start by talking about a special kind of secondary source that you'll often find in library databases and use for research: scholarly sources. Scholarly sources are also often called peer-reviewed sources. Let's take a look at this article, Shirley Jackson's The Lottery and Holocaust Literature. This is a scholarly secondary source, but how do we know this? First of all, we can read the abstract to see that this essay draws on literature, philosophy, and anthropology from the period to argue that Jackson's story invokes the themes of Holocaust literature, and that to support this argument, the essay explores imaginative Holocaust literature from the period by David Rousset. In other words, the purpose of this article is to present research that the author has done. This is a key feature of scholarly articles. They add new knowledge to an ongoing scholarly conversation through research. In this case, a larger conversation about how we read and understand the short story, The Lottery. Next, we can see that the author works in the Writing and Rhetoric department at the University of Rhode Island. Scholarly articles are usually written by professional scholars, like your professors, who are associated with a college or university. You can see that this article was published in a journal called Humanities. If we Google this title, we can easily find out that this is a peer-reviewed journal, meaning articles published in this journal undergo a formal review process involving other scholars reading and responding to the work. Finally, if we scroll to the end of this article, we'll find an extensive bibliography with tons of citations. Academic articles are written as part of a larger scholarly conversation on a topic, and the bibliography shows how the authors have situated themselves within that conversation. By citing peer-reviewed sources like this in your own research, you're participating in the scholarly conversation as well. Now that we have an understanding of what scholarly sources are, we can talk about finding them. The library is the best place to get started with your research, and it's especially useful for finding scholarly sources. These types of sources are expensive, and your tuition dollars help pay for the library to provide access to them. While you might be able to find some scholarly sources on Google, you'll often run into a paywall and not be able to read the whole article for free. Another issue with searching for sources on Google is that you'll probably get millions of results for your search and have a hard time narrowing those results down to high-quality academic sources. In library databases, your searches will return fewer results, but the results have been curated by humans who decided that these sources are useful for college-level research. Google has its place in research, though, and we'll talk more about it later in the video. Let's get started on the library homepage, library.louisville.edu. If you're off campus, you can still use the library's resources. You'll just be prompted to log in with your ULink ID and password when accessing our resources. The best place to get started finding scholarly sources is the library's subject guides. These subject guides divide up library databases by subject area, making it easier for you to find the most relevant resources for your research topic. For your literary analysis, you'll probably want to search in English databases. For your research paper on a geographical location, you might search in geography databases, history databases, or others that are relevant to your particular location or information needs. A database is simply a searchable collection of thousands of sources, many of which are scholarly sources. On the English subject guide, you'll find a list of appropriate library databases for this subject, including MLA International Bibliography and JSTOR. Let's do some searching in JSTOR. In this database, one of the first things you'll notice is that there are multiple search boxes at the top of the page. In library databases, we'll search with keywords. If I'm doing a literary analysis of Shirley Jackson's story, The Lottery, I'll use Shirley Jackson and The Lottery as my keywords. This search gave us over 4,000 results. You can always add more keywords if you want to make your search more specific. For example, I could add gender as a third keyword if I was specifically interested in research on gender in this story. I now have just over 1,000 results. On the left side of the screen, you'll see that JSTOR contains both academic secondary source content and primary source content. Since you are only interested in secondary sources, you can check the box next to journals, books, chapters, and research reports to get rid of all the primary source content. We now have under 200 results that are all secondary sources, many of which are scholarly articles. At this point, you can begin looking through the articles to find sources that seem relevant to your topic. I'm going to go ahead and click on this article, A Faithful Anatomy of Our Times, Reassessing Shirley Jackson. The first thing you should do when you click on an article in a database is read the article's abstract to see if it seems relevant to your research. Some articles, especially literary articles like this, won't have an abstract, so you can just read the first paragraph or two of the article to assess relevance. Another helpful tool here is the Cite button, which you can click to get the citation for the article in the appropriate style. If you decide you want to save this article to read later, there are a couple of options you can choose from. First, you can simply download the article to your computer. Another option is to copy this URL and send it to yourself. Don't send yourself the URL in your browser bar, as this is not permanent and will not get you back to the article later. For your research paper on a geographical location, you will utilize library databases for your search, along with search engines like Google. The library specializes in scholarly information like academic articles, but you can't find things like government websites for specific countries or simple information about a location's demographics through our databases. For these types of information, you'll want to use Google. The most important thing to remember when searching Google, though, is that you have to be careful to assess the credibility of information you find there. Remember, Google searches the entire internet for results that match your search, so you might have some bad information from unreliable sources slip through the cracks. A quick trick for assessing the credibility of sources you find on Google is to simply open up a new tab and see what you can find out about a source outside of that source. For example, I'm going to do a search for Lithuania demographics. The first thing I see is the AI overview. Am I going to take information directly from this AI overview? No. But I can check out the sources linked from here, like Worldometer, or scroll past the AI overview to access other websites. In this case, I'm going to go to the linked page for Lithuania Demographics 2026 on Worldometer. It looks like it has some good information that would be helpful in my paper, but how do I know for sure that this information is accurate? This is where we'll use the trick of seeing what we can find out about this source. Let's open up a new tab, Google Worldometer, and check out their Wikipedia page. Wikipedia is a great place to find out about the reputation of a source. In this case, I can find out that this is a reference website that provides real-time statistics and is voted as one of the best free reference websites by the American Library Association. I don't see any red flags about Worldometer here, and it seems to have a pretty good reputation. If you're ever unsure about the credibility of a particular source you find on Google, though, you can always talk to your instructor or a librarian. This has been a brief overview of using the library and Google to conduct research and find quality sources. If you ever have any questions while conducting research, librarians are here to help. On the library homepage, click Ask Us to chat with a librarian Monday through Friday from 9 to 5 and find more ways to get in contact with us. You can even schedule a virtual research appointment with a librarian for in-depth research help. Thanks!